welcome everybody to the Culture Works live stream series. I'm your host, Chester Elton, and as always, our distinguished guest is my good friend and
my name went away. Yeah,
Adrian Gostick. So welcome, Adrian. We're gonna talk about developing executive presence today.
exactly.
Interesting subject. Executive presence. What does that even mean?
It's a good question because it is such a nebulous idea. But we've all known those leaders that can walk into a room and they just grab attention. Whether it's our favorite politician, whether it's our favorite business leader, maybe somebody who you know from church or a community organization. There's just certain people you're drawn to them, and you really want to impress them. If you're working for them. So what is it? And you and I, we do a lot of executive coaching. This is probably the most requested item that we get for people who are mid-level. Maybe they're a director, maybe they're a vice president. They want to get to the C-suite. How do I develop this executive presence?
Yeah, well, first off, I want you to know that you have that executive presence. Whenever I'm with you, I want to make sure I impress you. And I'm also impressed that you have a favorite politician, that you would throw that out there. Not many people do these days. So anyway, you're right. In our executive coaching, that's often say, hey, I want to move up the ladder. I want to develop this executive presence. And in your wonderful article in Forbes, and by the way, if you're not following Adrian in Forbes, please check that box. It's just really great information, very thoughtful. And Adrian is a brilliant writer. Enough of the fanboy stuff. You talk about one of the attributes of someone who has executive presence is this calm confidence. Elaborate on that just a little bit.
Yeah, because oftentimes, unfortunately, we see in the world nowadays that so many people feel like to be an executive, you have to berate others, you have to be cocky, you have to be the know-it-all. And that's not really what people see nowadays as great leadership within business. They expect to be heard, these people that we've studied, so they don't need to interrupt. They're not rushing to get their words in. They don't worry if they don't have all the answers. One of the great leaders we've studied, Scott O'Neill, who is very good at getting, he used to run Madison Square Garden. He's one of the most powerful executives in sports. And he typically makes sure that people on his team are willing to challenge him by even planting some people, right, Chess?
Yeah. No, he would say, hey, in this meeting, we got too many yes men, because Scott has that presence where you come in and go, oh, the guy's so amazing. Everything he says is going to be great. And you don't ever want to disagree with him. And so he would literally plant somebody and say, look, your job is to disagree with me, and vehemently disagree with me. He's left sports, he's in entertainment now. And that presence has served him well.
Yeah.
It's a very transferable skill. The thing that you mentioned on this part that I really like is they're really active listeners.
Yeah.
They don't feel like they've got to be out front on everything, and they surround themselves with really good people. Together we're going to come to a better solution than if we're all sort of vying for that smartest guy in the room title. You in your article you talk about an interesting one, particularly in this hybrid world. We just did our panel on engagement in the hybrid workplace. You talk about body language. So I get the body language thing. Talk to me a little bit about not just when you're present with people, digital body language, that our friend Erica Dwan has written so beautifully about.
Right. Yeah, because this is the old world. Yeah, right. We would get the power stances, hips on hands on hips or arms folded, straight as an arrow, etc. That's not what we're seeing now with executive body language. That's where people are really trusted. They're more open. Their eyes are alert. They're smiling. They're turning their body to the person who's speaking, no matter the level of the person. I remember, being in, when I was a junior employee, and the senior and I might say something, and the boss wouldn't even turn to look at you. You're not even worthy of being turned toward. So nowadays we're seeing much more openness. They may lean back in their chairs, kind of really considering, boy, Chess, that's a great point. Really reaffirming. So it's a different type of body language than we have seen in the past, but it's much more inclusive, much more open.
Yeah, even casual wear, right? I mean, I remember coming up in the business, there were the power ties, the power color and all that. It's much more relaxed now, and I think much more healthy. Hey, just want to say hi to our friend Joe. I know Nate up in Boston. We haven't talked to Joe in a while. He's here. Nate Waldron, who's chimed in. We've got Natalie Cornu from Bend, Oregon. Sawara Ramsan, I hope I said that right, from Pakistan. And really appreciate you guys giving up your time to spend some time with us. And Abalash Pawar, I am clearly not saying.
Oh, it's like you're fluent. Yeah.
Yeah, my Urdu is not good. Anyway, moving along, you talk about motivator in chief. Is this the rah-rah guy?
Yeah, this is a good point, because that's not really what this is. That's the motivator in chief. Is that's one of your biggest jobs, is to make sure people understand, look, what's our mission? How do my goals daily fit into that mission? You're giving me a North Star, but you're also helping me make sure I understand how my work contributes to moving the ball along here. And as we've always talked about, they also recognize people, not just, hey, you sure look busy today, Chess. No, thanks for doing that task today, because that has helped our organization as it relates to the mission. So they're creating motivation, but by reinforcing vision, mission, and recognizing those things.
Yeah, I always kind of think of the chief motivator as being the biggest cheerleader in the room. I always loved that about Scott O'Neill. He said, in great teams, we cheer for each other. And I think that's a great way to think about that as well. You move from motivator to vulnerability. This is a tough one for a lot of leaders, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. When you think about this, when was the last time you admitted to your team that you'd made a mistake, or that you were, not able to accomplish something, or you needed help? That's what we're seeing with great leaders now, though, is that they realize that, look, I don't have all the answers. I feel some stress and vulnerability myself. Now, why would it help expressing that? Is people then can bring their best selves to the job. And part of this vulnerability too is allowing a little levity to happen now and then.
Yes.
It's not just, you're not Shecky Green up there. You're not cracking jokes. You're just allowing that laughter to happen and allowing a little lightness instead of, tapping your fingers on okay, let's get back to work, everybody.
Yeah. Shecky, that's a name you don't hear every day.
You don't. A lot of people naming their kids Shecky anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you wrote that wonderful book, The Levity Effect. And it is, I know nowadays people say you got to be really careful with humor. You can offend people and so on. And we do need to, humor has to be careful in some ways. Exactly. And yet, like you say, just a little bit of levity can just loosen people up and their guards come down. I always say, look, if you're having a lot of fun, you're going to be a lot more productive. There's no question about it. One of my favorites in your articles, and I've always been a big fan of this, is leaders that roll up their sleeves. Yeah. And they're not afraid to dig in and pitch in. We do a lot of work in the restaurant industry. Our good friends at Texas Roadhouse, where every leader has to know how to do every job. And there's something really... There's an executive presence about that when you know that your boss knows the job that you have to do, in fact, knows how to do that job and doesn't make ridiculous requests. Yeah. Because they know. So rolling up your sleeves, why is that just,
it's an interesting one. Yeah. I was recently in a, big manufacturing company in Nashville, and the head of HR was saying, we did some MBA recruiting. We went to Vanderbilt, which is in town there, and they were doing some recruiting, and they asked a question. Okay, we're trying to get this product out by the end of the day. This is happening. We've got this workflow problem. What do we do? And all these MBAs were saying, well, I would do this. I would look at Six Sigma. And I would look at, and finally, one of the candidates said, well, I'd roll up my sleeves and I'd go help them. And the guy says, you're hired. And turns out this young man was a former military officer, and he knew exactly what you do in a stressful situation. You don't sit back and think about how we can make it better. Go help. It's simple, right?
Pitch in. Hey, I want to give a shout out to Diana, who's joining us from Cincinnati, Ohio. Osmarie Torres from Toronto, Canada. Good season for the Maple Leafs. No cup, but hey, good season. Thanks again for chiming in and giving us your time today. And Dr. Dwight Sanders, also from Cincinnati, Ohio. So, empathy. Next on the list for executive presence, you talk about empathy. Now, empathy is a lot different than sympathy. And I know you've got a great way of explaining the difference there.
Yeah, well, sympathy is, oh, bummer, dude. Yeah, you're having that problem. No, empathy is, I've gone through tough things too. You don't talk about that. Well, let me tell you how bad I've got it. No, you just remember those feelings as you're talking with the person. And 9 times out of 10, when somebody comes to you, one of your people comes to you with an issue, what do they want, Jess?
Yeah, they want you to listen.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they don't really need you to solve it, but I do want you to feel like, no, look, you know who I am, what my story is, what my family situation is. You've got my back.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the interaction that's going on in the comments. So let's put Dr. Sana's question up there. I love this about being the chief motivator. Um, Acknowledgement increases motivation. It becomes a driving force. Although, can it push your workforce towards burnout? That's a great question.
It's a really good question because sometimes we become achievement junkies.
Yeah.
And Dr. Ishir is right, is that especially the people who are highly engaged are actually at greater risk of being burned out, of burning them out, because they just love to achieve. So we give them more and more. Right. And so that's where this really has to become a balancing act. You'll never get it perfect. In our book, Anxiety at Work, we talk a lot about how you avoid overload. You balance work among the team. You make sure people have time when they can come down. You help prioritize their work, etc. It's a really good point that don't become, the achievement junkie.
Yeah. Be careful with your top achievers, especially because you can burn them out because they never say no, right? You load them up.
Yeah.
Okay. We've only got a couple of more minutes here. I'm going to give the last two: be strategic and be fully focused.
The first off, being strategic. And, as I work with executives, we teach them, like, as you go into a meeting, take control sometimes. Get up and, work the whiteboard. Okay, what does this workflow mean? What are we trying to accomplish here? Because sometimes people will dive in these meetings to what do we want to get done instead of, okay, whoa, what do our customers need? How do we look at this from a big picture? You take that role, you're going to seem much more of an executive. And this last is really important. I've noticed the executives that I really admire go into a meeting, they're not fiddling around on their phones.
Right. They're not distracted.
Doing 12 other things. They're focused in that meeting. When they're there, they're focused. And they have tremendous ability to do that. And because of that, they respect people's time. They show up on time. They stay to the end if they can. It's just a different way of thinking.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Everything we do eventually comes back to gratitude, right? And that's expressing gratitude for people's time, right? Yeah. You're focused. You're there. Nate Waldron has a great comment here in the comment section. He says, "I think motivation needs to go beyond acknowledgement and move toward both appreciation and recognition in ways that the receiver wants," which you are big fans of customizing. That gratitude and the reward. What do people want? Do they want another assignment or do they want time off? There's a big difference. Hey, we're going to reward you with even more work.
Yeah.
At any rate, I love this list, Adrian. And of course, I'm a big fan of your writing and have been for over 20 years. And you know that. Yeah. I love this list. And I love the challenge that you put at the end where it says, look, you're going to go through this list and there's going to be some things you say, I'm pretty good at that. And there's going to be others that maybe you haven't thought about where you need a little more focus, a little more emphasis, because when you've got that great executive presence, people want to work for you. They want to come, they want to stay, they want to have some fun. It builds relationships. I mean, you get that presence right, as our friend Scott O'Neill did. And boy, people will follow you to the ends of the earth. They will give you their best every day. Well, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. As always, Adrian, I give you the last.
Oh,
wrap it up.
That's great. Yeah, just one thought is, if you have a mentor, if you don't find a mentor, take this list, print out the article, walk through with them and say, where am I good? Find somebody who'll be honest with you. That's your challenge, is to think where I can stretch myself with these 7 or 8 steps today.
Excellent. Take care, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Cheers.